Hello and welcome to another video on the best games of a letter, Arcade Edition. And this is for the letter N. Yes, in this video series I imagine what if I could only choose 5 games per letter per system and discard all others. What would I choose? So this means I'm not coming from the point of view of which games are most important to video gaming history or even which games are most beloved. But instead, for me, personally, what games do I like to play above all else? Now my choices here may surprise you, but this video series is just a bit of fun and simply a way to rekindle some old memories and help give people suggestions on what games to play the next time they are cranking up their retro-laden lists to decide what they're going to play next. Now this was a really fun letter to do, as whilst my top 5 was quite difficult to choose from, there's so many wonderful hidden gems worthy of mention here that needs to be tried by more. So I'm going to warn you now, this is going to be a longer episode as I cover many of these hidden gems. Okay, without further ado, let us begin. Okay, for my 5th choice, I've gone for the Taito platform classic, The New Zealand Story, released in 1988 and featuring an impossibly cute Kiwi bird called Tiki, who, after managing to escape the evil Wally Seal, who's kidnapped all your friends, sets out on an epic and dangerous quest to rescue them all, armed only with a little bow and arrow. Now what we have here is a brightly coloured, fun platformer with insanely catchy music and sprawling maze-like levels to reach your caged brethren. Now to do this you must often steal the rides of the enemies or find hot air balloons to allow you to fly through the open maze-like levels. Now I suspect for many this would be higher up people's lists, but for me I've never really gelled with this game personally. I find its over-reliance on flying everywhere and the constant stream of quickly generated enemies really frustrating and a real coin guzzler. Of course, one of the reasons this game is so loved by many is a fantastic home port on it, particularly on the Amiga, which is pretty much arcade perfect. And perhaps if I'd gone for that Batman pack where it was included all those years ago on the Amiga, I would have acquired a greater love for this game. As I mentioned, the ports are solid all across the board really, from the humble Spectrum, Amstrad and C64 right through to the consoles of the Master System and Mega Drive. Actually, the Mega Drive is quite an interesting one, with it being a port based on the prototype arcade board and not the final game. Consequently, the levels in the Mega Drive port has different enemy placements and a slightly different layout to the arcade game, and so this gives New Zealand game lovers a little bit of a slightly different challenge if you play the Mega Drive port. Still, out of all of them, for me it's the Amiga and ST ports which are definitely the best. These days the best way to play the game legally is on the Taito Legends collection, which was released on the PS2 and Xbox, offering gamers true arcade perfection. The PSP also has its own arcade perfect version as well on the PSP with the Taito Power Up collection, but these days the only way to play this is on MAME, but thankfully it plays perfectly here. Naturally, Arcade Club in Bury in the UK has the arcade original cabinet to play on, so you can take out those furry critters in all its original glory. Yes, overall, despite its frustrations, you cannot deny it's a polished and cute Taito platformer, and so for me this makes a deserved number 5 slot on my list. Right, okay, let's go on to my number 4 choice, and for this I've gone for Neo Bomberman, released in 1997 by Hudson Soft for the Neo Geo arcade and home console. Being the 15th release of the Bomberman games, 16 if you include Eric and the Floaters, this game takes a lot of art stylings and ideas from my favourite in that entire series of Saturn Bomberman, and whilst it's not as good at offering anything particularly new in the series, it is still a really solid and fun entry into the game series. Now for those people unfamiliar with this series, then the idea is you play a cute Bomberman robot who in single player must wander around the maze with things blocking your way. Therefore you must drop bombs to destroy these things blocking your way and get out of the blast zone before they go off to clear a path through to the enemies, and then do the same to take out the enemies themselves with the bombs. Now to win at each level you must clear all the enemies and then find the exit, which would be hidden in one of the the blocked items in the maze, and this allows you to get on to the next stage. Now, to help you on this quest, you will discover that some of these exploded crates reveal power-ups offering multiple bombs, bigger blast radiuses, and little dino creatures that you can ride, and makes you move faster and acts as a single protection against any blast you happen to walk into. It all gets pretty manic and hectic here, with bombs and blasts strewn everywhere as you try and trap the enemy. Often deaths are as a result of you panicking, quite frankly, and trapping yourself in your own bombs, or walking into your own bomb blast zone instead of the actual enemies killing you by reaching you. But of course, that is what makes this game so much fun to play. Still, as good as a single player it is, it's multiplayer where Bomberman always shines. And this is where you and another Bomberman robot are placed in the battle arena, so you must blast your way through to take out the other robot before they do the same to you. It's a lot of fun, but sadly this game only really gives you 2 players, so to have only 2 of you, it doesn't really work in these arenas, with you needing at least 4 players, in my opinion, for games like this to work and really bring the Bomberman multiplayer experience to truly come alive. But despite the lack of multiplayer excitement, the single player is worth the price of a mission alone. And so if you want a bit of bomber blasting action in your life, then this is definitely worthy of your time. Okay, now we come on to my third choice, and I've gone for NBA Jam Tournament Edition, released by Midway in 1994. And it's a 2-on-2 official NBA basketball game with licensed players. But instead of being a realistic portrayal of the sport, this is about fun, with a capital F-U-N, with here you having characterizations of the actual players, all performing over-the-top moves and slam dunks. When NBA Jam first came to our shores in 1993 and the year before Tournament Edition, I was in high school, and this game blew me away in the arcades. You see, at the time it was the period of such greats as Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal, yet it was next to impossible to see actual games on UK TV. And so the sport built up an almost mythical component for me, and I was so desperate to get closer to seeing this sport in action. In fact, my biggest dream at this time was to have a basketball hoop in the back garden to shoot some hoops like they did in those American sitcoms like Roseanne we were all watching. So when I first saw NBA Jam in the arcades, I was overjoyed, with it offering me and my friends 4-player fun to play through. And it was this and WWF WrestleFest, which were the games that me and my friends were always drawn to first whenever we made it to the arcades together. I loved it, with the players gaining confidence for each score they make and succeed in 3 consecutive scores in a row, making the player go on fire. This means they become much quicker and better at scoring, and also resulting in little flame animations in the hoop when they do score. It was just all so cool. The following year, in 1994, due to the global success of the game, Midway released this game, its sequel, called NBA Jam Tournament Edition. And I've chosen this sequel as it adds a lot more to the original game, although the core mechanics are basically the same. There's a tournament section, hence the name in this, where you can pitch yourself up against 27 teams and follow on action, but also the ability to swap your players beforehand and during half time to mix things up a little bit with the players that you use. Naturally, such a surefire hit game would quickly get ports on most of the consoles of the day. Firstly, NBA Jam came out on the SNES and the Mega Drive in 1994, and even on the Game Boy and 32X. For me though, it was when the game came to the Sega Saturn and PlayStation in 1995, and later on the Jaguar in 1996, that I picked this game up and never looked back. These were basically arcade perfect ports. It was amazing to have such a favourite game of mine in the arcades finally in my hands at home. From my uni days, NBA Jam was a massive, well-loved game for me, and I played it to death, even if it was not one of my favourites of my uni friends at the time, and so it became quite a solo single-player experience for myself. These days, for the longest time, the game's languished for me, as my interest of NBA basketball has waned, and so did my interest for the game overall, and this is where it was left for years. Thankfully though, playing through these arcade games again for this video series, and spending some serious time with this title again, has really rekindled my love for what I enjoyed all those years ago, and really appreciating what a fun title this is. So these days, outside of the Saturn, PS1 and Jaguar ports, the only way to really get the arcade experience again is on MAME. Thankfully though, Arcade Club in Bury have an NBA Jam 4 Player Edition cabinet available to play, and so grabbing 4 friends together and playing through this as it was meant to be played is a real treat. Okay, let's go on to my number 2 choice, and I've gone for Neo Turf Masters. Released in 1996 and made by SNK, developed though by the NASCAR Corporation, who, the same year, also released the Metal Slug game, before they were all brought and bought in-house by SNK. Now, normally, I've never been bothered with golf games, or golf itself for that matter, but there's something about this title that just works for me, and it's a perfect counterbalance to all the usual fast moving action of normal arcade games. Set across 4 countries, being Germany, Japan, Australia and the US, and like the real thing, it has you whack those balls across 18 courses. But this game just works for me with the great jazzy and catchy elevator music playing away and the solid in-game controls that remain arcade-like and accessible, but still have enough skill to keep you all engaged. It's also the cute little touches like the Japanese girl excitedly calling out what's happening in the game, such as the green when you land on the putting green, or the animations of the golfers screaming I did it as you achieve a birdie or an eagle, or more likely if I'm playing, a look of despair and anguish to crying oh no as they get another bogey. Now, the NASCAR Corporation was created off the back of an IREM restructuring program, and so the guys of these former IREM employers thought that they could take the popular IREM game of the early 90s called Major Title and update it for the new and exciting Neo Geo arcade machine. Now, to be honest, the Major Titles games were pretty dull in my opinion, but somehow though, even though it used pretty much the same mechanics as that game, it just seems to 100% work with Neo Turf Masters. So why does it work so well? Well, I think it's because everything is honed to perfection with the presentation. The music, the characters, they're all exactly right, and it whizzes through all the controls, and so being really fast and accessible and exciting whilst still being challenging as you make your way around the courses. Yes, all in all, this for me is gaming golfing perfection, and certainly my favourite golfing game of all time. I think it's never been beaten as a golf game, and so it really needs to be played by more. Right, now we come to my number 1 game, and I've chosen Neo Geo Cup 98, The Road to Victory, released by SNK in 1998 and in time for the 1998 World Cup that was held in France that year. Now, this is really just a reworking of Super Psychics 3. They've basically updated the groups and the players to match the qualifying groups of the real World Cup that year. Beyond that though, there's no real differences to see, but what we do have here is a stunningly fun arcade football game with perfect presentation and smooth, addictive gameplay that makes this game so much fun and compelling play, either as single player or versus another person. Of course, it is unlicensed, as EA held the FIFA license at the time, so expects plenty of similar sounding names but not quite right. But who cares about license when the gameplay and presentation is so good in this game? It all moves at a tremendous and exciting pace, with you quickly passing and taking a shot on goal into the back of the net to be followed by great short cutscenes for your scorer and celebrating it to the upbeat music that plays. Also worthy of note is the great player animations that will do tricks and turns and call for the ball and make their way and beat the opponents to make a shot on goal, hopefully curling it past the keeper to the roaring excited crowds. Also, when appropriate, this does great little view changes, so when you're doing a free kick near the goal or a penalty, it lets you target precisely in first person how you want to bend it like Beckham, or probably in this game Bexham, into the back of the net. Yes, on reflection, this is gaming sport perfection for me, and it's one of the best football games out there in my opinion. So alongside Sensible Soccer and Kickoff 2, this is absolutely my favourite football game of all time. So there you go, that was my top 5 games for the letter N. But as I mentioned at the top end of this, there's plenty of big hitters and also an amazing amount of honourable mentions that I just have to shout out and give mention to. So it's well worth sticking to the end. Okay, let's come to the big hitters. Now you're probably splitting feathers over some of these, but I'll try and explain why I didn't choose them. At least I'm giving them an honourable mention here. So the biggest one on the cutting room floor, of course, is Nemesis, or Gradius as it's known outside of Europe. Now this, I admit, is a great horizontal shooter released in 1985 by Konami, and undoubtedly vitally important to video game history and shooters overall. But for me personally, I've just never gelled with the game. I find it really hard and frustrating for my poor gaming skills. And it's a real shame, as I adore the music and the clever power-up system, and watching a talented player own this game by playing it, and you can truly appreciate the sheer majesty that this game offers. But for me, sadly, this is just a title of infuriating anguish, and so it fails to make my list here. Incidentally though, this is another game that is available in Arcade Club in Bury. Now another game fondly loved, but one that I'm not personally a fan of, is the arcade game Ninja Gaiden in America, or Shadow Warriors in Europe as it was known. It was also known as Ninja Ryu Kenden in Japan. Now this is a well-loved scrolling beat-em-up, and not the far superior, in my opinion, action platforming gem on the NES. Released in 1988 by Tecmo, it has you play Ryo the Dragon Ninja, taking out lots of bad guys across American cities and stuff. Now back in the late 80s and early 90s, the ninjas were king, and every young boy wanted nothing more than to join the mutant turtles and shinobi their way across all the enemies into dust. How we all survived, swishing samurai swords at each other, rulers, and hurling whatever plastic discs we could find, Morningstar shurikens, at each other, I never will know. But thankfully there were safer alternatives to channel our ninja heroic actions, being placed into the ninja video games that were abundant at the time. Now of them, this game was alright, I guess. There's some nice lamppost swinging actions and cool locations and some cool looking moves. But for me, I've never really got on with this game. I find it really clunky and just therefore never really gelled as a kid. Now much better was Ninja Spirit, released in 1988 by Irem. Now this fiendish platform, hard action, hack and slash game was much more fun back in the day, but going back to it today, I just don't simply have the skills that I once did, and prefer the home ports such as on the Solid Spectrum version that plays much slower and so easier for me to actually play through. Of course, Narc by Williams, released in 1988, is also worthy of a mention, made by the legend who is Eugene Robotron 2084 Jarvis. And here we have yet another over-the-top blaster, but this time side-scrolling as opposed to the above viewpoint that he normally does with games like Smash TV. But like those games, there's lots of blood and guts flying everywhere, but I find the game really repetitive here, and just leaves me cold after the initial 5 minutes of playing through. Right, okay, Nam 1975 by SNK, and released in 1990. Now in many ways this is an update to the classic Cabal game, having you take a target and run at the same time, using the pointer to blast the hell out of everything. It's a lot of fun, but this is another one that I find gets really samey for me personally after an initial playthrough. Now another big favourite with people was the 3-screen extravaganza called Ninja Warriors by Taito, and released in 1988. What we have here is essentially Kung Fu Master mixed in with Shinobi, all set to an incredibly cool and catchy tune. Now I'll be honest, I find I get pretty bored of this game in long sessions, but for quick arcade blasts it's a real joy to play through. Now amazingly, Arcade Club actually has in Bury this wonderful 3-screen original cab for you to play through, and it's great going back to how it was meant to be played. Okay, so they were the big hitters. Now let's move on to the amazing lineup of lesser known titles worthy of your time, and boy do I have some absolute pearlers for you. Okay, the first one to mention is Namco Namco's Classic Collection Volume 1, released in 1995 by Namco. This collection not only has the original Galaga, Xevious and Mappy games, but a worthy remaster of each. All of these remasters are well worthy of your time, with Galaga in particular taking all that they had learned from Galaga 88, but streams back all that craziness to keep it more in line with the original. Is consequently a huge amount of fun, and one that I heartily recommend you giving a go. Likewise, Xevious mixes in nice music here in the arrangement and gives updated visuals, making this a brilliant update to that original game. Finally, Mappy updates the visuals and is pretty much the same gameplay. I've never been that much of a fan of the game, but it's nice to see it updated and able to enjoy here. Incidentally, the Namco Museum Collection are on the PS1, PS2, Xbox and GameCube, and these arrangements are included on the Namco Museum items. So outside of Maine, there are legal ways to play this game and play through. The follow-up to the collection is Namco's Classic Collection Volume 2, released in 1996, the following year. Like the first collection, this is more Namco games, where both the original and remastered arrangements of each. The Pac-Man arrangement is probably the biggest change in all the games, being totally revamped with bright visuals and a different, more 3D looking viewpoint, and offering lots of gameplay tweaks and extras to make this title a lot of fun. Rally X, likewise, is just a graphical update really, and whilst worth playing a playthrough, it's not that different to the original. Finally, Dig Dug is the last revamp of the pack, and they've updated the graphics and sounds, but to be honest, I think this is the weakest of the lot, with the updated visuals and music just losing something of the charm of that original game, and so leaves the remastered arranged version a little flat in my opinion. Now, talking of updating old classics, well, Neo Geo Mr Do, released in by Visco on the Neo Geo in 1996, is a great place to start. Being the last in the Mr Do series, this has you pick up with that creepy clown again to do more digging and take out all the enemies. But there's so many new ideas bursting to the scene with this revamp, and I simply adore it. And for the longest time, quite frankly, this was on my top 5 for the letter, but eventually Neo Bomberman just won me over, partly because I wanted some Bomberman love into my overall lists. But trust me, this is an amazing hidden gem and it needs to be played by more. Wow, as I say, this letter is chock full of amazing lesser-known titles, and Nebula Ray, released in 1994 by Namco, is a great example of that. It's a vertical blaster that looks and plays the part with great power-ups, and it's such a shame that this game never has been seen anywhere outside of the arcades or even in emulated game packs, meaning that unless you play it on MAME or stumble across it in the arcade somewhere, you'll never be able to play this fun little title. Now, talking of forgotten games only found in the arcade, well, there's this weird 1990 platformer by Namco as well, called Nemo. Now, this is definitely a strange one, being set in this weird 2D platformer, and has Nemo jumping around in a dreamlike world with his sidekick Flip to find the king in Slumberland. The game is just weird and mad, and certainly it's not quite a classic, but it's got enough interesting ideas to keep you playing through to the end. Okay, next we have Neo Drift Out, New Technology, released in 1996 by Visco, and this was the last in the Drift Out series, and again continues with racing in the overhead isometric perspective. Like its predecessors, this is a huge amount of fun, with you taking on 6 different tracks around the world to pick up the champion. Now, this is a real hidden gem and really quite special, called Night Striker and released in 1989 by Taito. This is a fast, sprite-scaling racer shooter where you control a hover car. You must race through the futuristic city and shoot all the enemies and then destroy eventually the boss. Riffing on classics like Thunderblade and Space Harrier, this is really an interesting title to play, and it's crazy to me that although we saw this on the Mega CD, Sony PlayStation and Sega Saturn in Japan, it was never released in the West. So for a lot of people, they will have missed out on it. Definitely worth giving this a try. Still, the amazing quality continues with hidden gems for this letter with Ninja Baseball Bat. This is a mad, crazy, side-scrolling beat-em-up released by Irem in 1993. The zany cartoon characters and the wacky animations really make up for this game, being a huge amount of fun. Now, to have a 4-player cartoon-scrolling beat-em-up themed around baseball sounds absolutely stupid and mad. Well, it is, but surprisingly it all really works, and it's a ton of laughs and well worth your time, particularly if you love those kind of scrolling beat-em-ups like Simpsons and Asterix. Now, talking of mad cartoon scrolling beat-em-ups, have you tried Ninja Kids, released in 1991 by Taito? This is a fun little title, designed by Rintaro Doi, who brought the world Super Space Invaders. Now, thankfully, on this game, it does appear in the Taito Legends compilation, and it is sold separately on the Switch, where you can buy as part of their Arcade Classic collection. So there's a plenty of opportunity to rekindle an interest and play through this game again. Now, totally unrelated to the last game is Ninja Kid 2. Note the non-plural kid. Yes, this was released in 1987 by UPL, and it's called Rad Action in the US, but Ninja Kid 2 everywhere else. And it's part of the Ninja Kun series. This is actually a sequel to the game on the NES, so as you play this impossibly cute ninja, taking out other ninjas as you set to save probably a princess or something. It's really, really charming and fun, and this is another game that's made it onto the Nintendo Switch as part of the Arcade Classic collection. Oh man, now this is a really fun title, being Ninja Commando by Alpha Denshi and released in 1992. Now, it's not to be confused with the Zeppelin release on the home computers. That was a totally different game. No, the elevator pitch for this one is mercs with ninjas and time travel. Now, if I haven't sold you on that little gem just by that elevator pitch, I don't know what will. Yes, this is a 2-player shooter that will have most people sold on that original premise alone, but it does a really good job of it as well. There's loads of cool ideas with this game, and you'll be beaming ear to ear as you play through. It's definitely another gem that you need to play. Wow, there's a lot of ninja games and really good ninja games here, but this one is really special. Ninja Princess, or Sega Ninja as it was known in the US, has you play a female character ninja out on a quest to overthrow the evil tyrant Gyokuro. Released in 1985, this has actually came out a few months before Commando, and so it's often argued, successfully I believe, that this is actually the first overhead scrolling run and gun shooter. It was also designed by a famous female game developer and one of the ones at the forefront and pioneers of early video game development. Riko Kodama went on to be instrumental in video game series, doing such titles as Phantasy Star games and being involved with such diverse titles as Shadow Dancer and the Sonic games. Now, this game has recently been brought into prominence by the Ready Player 2 book, which covers quite a bit about this game, and it's definitely worthy of your time. Incidentally though, if it looks familiar to you, well, this was released as Ninja on the SG-1000 and Sega Master System, but Sega felt that young kids wouldn't like the female game character, and so they switched out the graphics to be a boy ninja instead of a girl. Overall though, this is a rock hard classic that is important to both video game history and a great title to boot, and well worthy of you tracking down and giving it a go. My word, the hidden gems keep coming on this letter, but it'd be remiss of me not to mention this one. Newman Athletics by Namco in 1993 is essentially what would you have if you did track and field Olympics, but instead of doing boring old events and boring old contestants, you replace them with superheroes. So instead you're punching missiles out of the sky, or hurling missiles like javelins, or stopping runaway trains as you progress in each event. This game is so much fun and really well presented throughout, making it a real enjoyable gem. So if you love your Olympic style event games, then this is a great alternative to mix things up for you. Okay, next we have Nitro Ball, and this is another belter as well, being made by Data East and released in 1992. Known in Japan as Gunball, it's made by Jinbo, who co-designed the original Contra game when he was at Konami, and this essentially mixes in Smash TV with pinball-like levels. Okay, it might be riffing a lot on Smash TV, but it's fun, it's frantic, and it's a genuine blast as you make your way through levels. But I've saved the best for last, as you need to play this game. It's called Night Slashers, and it's another Data East title released in 1993. Now essentially this is a horror-themed scrolling beat-em-up, which has you taking on many beasties of the night, from slobbering zombies to wolves and demons. This game is so much fun, and it's crazy that it doesn't get talked about more, or even see a re-release. And boy, do we need a Data East collection in all of our lives. So give this amazing game a go today, you won't be disappointed. Right, there you go, that was my top 5 for the letter N. It was certainly a great letter for the hidden gems, even if my actual top 5 may have surprised you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I cannot wait to hear your own suggestions and thoughts of what games you would choose for this letter. So look out for my next video covering the letter O, and I'm so looking forward to covering this letter with you. So until next time, keep it retro.